Ryan Carter's breath came in ragged gasps as he stumbled forward, his hands bound behind his back with thick, rusted cuffs. The alien pirates shoved him into the middle of the dimly lit cargo bay, their laughter echoing through the metal walls. They stood around him, their twisted faces filled with amusement, their sharp teeth glinting under the flickering lights. To them, he was a joke, just another weak, pathetic human who had wandered too far into the wrong part of space. One of the aliens, a towering brute with dark green scales and 4 yellow eyes, stepped closer. His name was Vokran, the captain of this ruthless gang. He leaned down, his foul breath washing over Ryan as he sneered. "You really thought you could steal from us, little human." His voice was deep and filled with mockery. The others joined in, their laughter cruel and sharp. Ryan clenched his jaw, but said nothing. He had been scavenging through the wreckage of a destroyed cargo ship when they found him. He wasn't a thief. He was just trying to survive. Space was a brutal place, and humans weren't exactly at the top of the food chain out here. The stronger alien species ruled, and humans were often seen as little more than pests, weak creatures barely worth noticing. Vokran straightened up and waved a hand. "Strip him of his gear. Not that he has anything worth taking." 2 of the smaller aliens rushed forward, yanking away his worn-out jacket, tearing off his utility belt, and tossing it aside like garbage. They checked his pockets, pulled out a small rusted knife, and laughed. One of them held it up like a trophy, shaking his head. Pathetic, he spat, tossing the knife to the ground. Ryan's heart pounded, but he refused to let them see his fear. He had heard stories of what happened to humans captured by pirate crews. If he begged, they'd only enjoy his suffering more. If he fought, they'd kill him on the spot. He had no weapons, no way to fight back. The only thing he had left was his pride, and even that was slipping away with every cruel word and mocking laugh. Vokran turned away and gestured toward the airlock. "You're not even worth selling. We don't need another weak human slave." He grinned, his sharp teeth gleaming. "But I'll tell you what, we'll give you a chance. There's a derelict warship floating in the next sector. No one's ever come back from it. We'll drop you there. If you survive, well, that would be interesting." The others laughed louder, jeering as they grabbed him by the arms and dragged him toward the docking bay. Ryan struggled, but it was useless. The cuffs dug into his wrists, and his feet barely touched the ground as they hauled him forward. The doors to the airlock slid open with a hiss, revealing the cold, endless void of space beyond the force field. A small, rusted escape pod sat waiting for him, a piece of junk barely held together by metal and wires. They shoved him inside, slamming the hatch shut before he could resist. The pod's systems flickered to life, and within seconds, the countdown for launch began. Ryan barely had time to brace himself before the force of the ejection sent the pod hurtling through space. He gritted his teeth, watching through the tiny viewport as the pirate ship grew smaller in the distance. The laughter of his captors still rang in his ears. They thought this was a death sentence. They thought they had won. Ryan's gaze shifted forward as the escape pod approached the massive, shadowy wreck of the warship. It loomed in the darkness, its structure twisted and broken, floating aimlessly in the void. It was ancient, its design unfamiliar, its surface scarred from battles fought long before he was born. It looked dead, but something inside him told him otherwise. As the escape pod drifted closer, Ryan felt a strange energy in the air, an unshakable feeling deep in his bones. The pirates had left him here to die, laughing at his weakness. But they had made a mistake, because something was waiting for him inside that ship. And whatever it was, it had just sensed his arrival. "You said." The escape pod rattled violently as it entered the wrecked warship's gravity field. Ryan braced himself, gripping the edges of the tiny seat as warning lights flashed across the console. The pod's systems were failing, its oxygen levels dropping, power flickering. If he didn't get out soon, he would suffocate. With a loud clang, the pod slammed into the metal floor of what looked like an ancient hangar bay. The impact sent him tumbling forward, his head nearly smashing into the control panel. For a moment, everything was silent except for the distant creaks and groans of the warship's old, wounded structure. Then, with a hiss, the pod's emergency systems kicked in, forcing the door to slide open. Cold, stale air rushed in. Ryan coughed, pushing himself up with his bound hands. He hesitated only for a second before stepping out onto the hangar floor. His boots echoed in the vast, empty space. The place was massive, far bigger than he expected. Rows of rusted ships, long forgotten, sat covered in layers of dust and debris. The walls were lined with strange markings, symbols from a language he didn't recognize. The ship wasn't just old, it was ancient. He flexed his fingers, testing the cuffs that still held his wrists together. He needed to find something to break them off. The pirates had left him with nothing. No weapons, no tools. They had expected him to wander this ghost ship until he starved. But Ryan wasn't about to give them that satisfaction. He moved carefully through the wreckage, stepping over fallen beams and shattered metal. The place felt abandoned, yet something in the air told him otherwise. There was a presence here, something watching him. He tried to shake the feeling, telling himself it was just his imagination. Then he saw it. A door at the far end of the hangar, different from the others. It was massive, circular, sealed tight. Unlike the rest of the ship, this part looked untouched. No dust, no rust. The symbols on the metal glowed faintly, pulsing with a dim blue light. Ryan stepped closer, heart pounding. The moment he reached out, the ship seemed to react. The lights flickered, the air grew heavy, and then the door slid open. Beyond it was a dark chamber, unlike anything he had ever seen, and in the center of that room, standing tall like a forgotten king, was a suit of armor. Not just any armor. Something old, something powerful, something waiting for him. Ryan stepped into the dark chamber, his breath shallow. The air was thick, charged with something unnatural, something ancient. The armor stood in the center of the room, resting on a raised platform. It was massive, unlike anything he had ever seen. Dark metal plates covered its surface, etched with glowing blue lines that pulsed faintly, as if the armor itself was alive. His instincts screamed at him to back away, but something about the suit pulled him forward. The pirates had left him here to die, mocking his weakness, believing he was nothing. But standing before this armor, Ryan felt something stir inside him, something dangerous. The moment he took another step, the room responded. The walls lit up, revealing more symbols, their light growing brighter. A deep hum vibrated through the floor, and suddenly, the armor moved. Not much, just a slight shift, but enough to make Ryan freeze. A voice echoed in the chamber. It wasn't spoken aloud, but it rang through his mind like a whisper from the past. Worthy. Ryan's pulse pounded in his ears. He turned, searching for the source of the voice, but there was no one else there. The armor, however, was no longer still. The blue energy pulsed faster, and the front of the suit slowly opened, revealing a hollow interior just large enough for a human. The message was clear. It was meant for him. Ryan hesitated. He had no idea what this armor was, where it had come from, or what it would do to him. But he had no other options. He was alone, stranded, hunted. If this was his only chance to survive, he had to take it. With a deep breath, he stepped forward. The moment he placed his foot on the platform, the restraints on his wrists shattered, breaking apart as if they had never been there. He flexed his fingers in shock, but before he could react, the armor pulled him in. The plates shifted, wrapping around him. Cold metal pressed against his skin. And then, power. Energy surged through his body like fire. His muscles tensed, his mind flooded with information. Combat protocols, system diagnostics, targeting overlays. Knowledge he had never learned but suddenly understood. His vision sharpened, his senses expanded. He felt stronger, faster, something more than human. Then, a warning flashed across his vision. Unidentified life forms detected. Hostiles inbound. Ryan clenched his fists. The pirates had returned, likely to scavenge his corpse. They thought he was weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Ryan turned toward the exit as red warning symbols flashed across his vision. The armor had completely fused with him now, the interface feeding him information at an overwhelming speed. His breathing was steady, his heartbeat powerful. He had never felt anything like this before, like his body had been reforged into something beyond human. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Heavy boots clanking against the metal floors of the derelict ship. The pirates were back. His enhanced vision outlined them before they even entered the hangar. A group of 6, armed and cautious. They weren't laughing anymore. The distress signal sent by the last pirate must have reached them. And now they were here to check if he was really dead. Ryan's lips curled into a smirk. They were about to be very, very disappointed. He stepped forward, the armor moving effortlessly with him. It was like a second skin, amplifying his strength, sharpening his reflexes. He could feel the ship around him, as if it were part of him now, as if it had been waiting for a warrior to claim it once more. The lead pirate, a thick-skinned reptilian with jagged scars running down his snout, entered the hangar first. He held a plasma rifle at the ready, scanning the room. His 4 eyes narrowed when he spotted Ryan standing in the middle of the chamber. For a moment, there was silence. Then the pirate's jaw dropped. "Impossible," he snarled, stepping back. "You should be dead." Ryan tilted his head. "You first." He moved before they could react. One step, then another, and suddenly, he was rushing forward at inhuman speed. The armor enhanced his every movement, making him faster, stronger, more precise. The first pirate barely had time to pull the trigger before Ryan closed the distance and slammed his fist into the alien's chest. The impact was devastating. A sickening crack filled the air as the pirate was launched backward, smashing into a metal pillar. He crumpled to the ground, unmoving. The others hesitated for only a second before opening fire. Ryan's vision flared with targeting data. The moment they fired, his body moved on instinct. Plasma bolts streaked toward him, but the armor reacted faster than thought, shifting plates to absorb the energy. The shots didn't even burn him. He dashed sideways, his movements a blur. He reached the second pirate before the alien could adjust his aim, grabbing his rifle and crushing it with one hand. The pirate's eyes widened in terror, but before he could scream, Ryan delivered a brutal kick that sent him flying across the room. The rest of the pirates panicked. "What is he?" one of them shrieked. Ryan didn't answer. Instead, he raised his hand, and for the first time, he willed the armor to respond. A surge of energy crackled through his gauntlet, and suddenly, a blade of pure plasma formed from his wrist. The pirates' faces turned pale. Ryan stared at them through his helmet, his voice cold and calm. "Run." But they were too slow. Ryan launched himself forward. And in that moment, the galaxy's balance shifted, because for the first time in centuries, a true human warrior had awakened, and he was just getting started. "You said." The last pirate barely had time to scream before Ryan's plasma blade carved through his weapon, slicing it in half like paper. The remaining 2 turned to run, their fear overriding any sense of pride or duty. Too late. Ryan moved like a phantom, his armored boots barely making a sound as he surged forward. The first pirate didn't even see him coming before Ryan grabbed the back of his head and slammed it into the floor with bone-crushing force. The second pirate, a wiry insectoid, let out a high-pitched shriek and raised his arms in surrender. Ryan loomed over him, the glow of his armor reflecting in the alien's wide, terrified eyes. He could feel the armor urging him forward, its ancient systems recognizing threats, analyzing weaknesses, offering ways to kill with maximum efficiency. For a moment, He considered it. These pirates had captured him, humiliated him, left him to die. It would be so easy to end them all. But then something pulled him back. The armor was powerful, too powerful, and he had no idea what it had done to the last person who wore it. He refused to become some mindless executioner. The insectoid pirate trembled, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Please, mercy." Ryan exhaled slowly, letting the energy blade retract into his gauntlet. "Get out," he said, his voice distorted slightly by the helmet's built-in speaker. "Tell your crew what happened here. Tell them humanity isn't weak." The alien nodded so fast it looked painful, then scuttled away as fast as his legs could carry him. Ryan didn't watch him go. His focus had already shifted. The armor had awakened something inside the ship, and the ship had responded. The floor beneath him trembled. Lights flickered to life across the walls, and a deep hum resonated through the entire structure. The derelict warship, this ancient, forgotten titan, was stirring from its long slumber. Then, a new message flashed across his vision. Pilot recognized. Command interface unlocked. Systems initializing. Ryan's eyes widened. This wasn't just a suit of armor. This was the key to something much, much bigger. The warship wasn't dead. It was waiting. And now it had a new commander. "You said." The ship awoke. Ryan could feel it, not just hear it, not just see it, but feel it. The moment the armor recognized him as its pilot, something deeper connected. It was like the ship had been sleeping for centuries, waiting for someone who could activate it. And now, through the armor, he was that someone. Lights blazed across the hangar bay. The walls hummed with energy. Ancient systems rebooted, their forgotten technology coming back to life. A deep vibration rumbled beneath his feet as the entire warship stirred, its reactors firing up for the first time in ages. Ryan's vision was suddenly flooded with data streams. Maps of the ship, its internal structure, its long-dormant weapon systems, all of it uploaded straight into his mind. He gasped, staggering for a second as his brain processed the sheer scale of what he was standing inside. This wasn't just a warship. This was a fortress, a juggernaut, a relic from a forgotten war. And now, it was his. Then came the alert. Multiple hostile vessels detected. Incoming pirate fleet. ETA, 15 minutes. Ryan's breath slowed. His mind sharpened. The pirates must have realized something was wrong. Maybe the lone survivor had sent a distress signal. Maybe the ones he killed had backup waiting. It didn't matter. They were coming, and they had no idea what they were about to face. Ryan clenched his fists. The armor hummed around him, sensing with the ship, feeding him everything he needed to know. This vessel had been abandoned for centuries, but its firepower, its defenses, they were still intact. He had a choice: run or fight. Ryan turned toward the massive hangar doors. He could already picture the enemy ships arriving, their arrogant captains expecting to find a dead human drifting among ruins. Instead, they would find him. A slow grin spread across his face. Let's see what this ship can really do. With a thought, he reached out, not with his hands, but with the armor, with the ship. And the warship answered. Engines roared. Shields surged to life. Weapons hummed, charging up after ages of silence. Ryan stood at the heart of it all, his pulse steady, his mind clear. The pirates thought they had trapped him here. Instead, they had just woken a monster. The warship roared to life. Ryan stood at the heart of the ancient behemoth, his mind linked to its vast systems. The armor had bonded him to the ship in ways he couldn't fully understand. But he didn't need to. He could feel its power, its weapons, its defenses. This was no ordinary derelict. This was a relic of a forgotten war, built to dominate battlefields. And now, after centuries of silence, it had a commander once more. The pirates had no idea what was coming. Warning: enemy fleet approaching. The alert flashed across his vision. A dozen ships, ranging from small raiders to a full-size destroyer, were closing in fast. Ryan could already imagine the grins on their faces, expecting an easy kill, expecting him to run. He wasn't running. He moved toward what looked like the ship's command throne. The moment he touched it, the entire room shifted, holograms flaring to life around him. Tactical readouts, shield integrity, weapons status, online. A deep, ancient voice rumbled in his mind. Battle mode engaged. Ryan sat down. The ship reacted instantly, wrapping interfaces around his arms, connecting him deeper. He wasn't just piloting it. He was becoming part of it. Outside, the pirate fleet arrived. Their lead destroyer moved into position, broadcasting an open channel message. Unidentified vessel, this is Captain Varnock of the Bloodfang Raiders. Power down and prepare to be boarded. Ryan smirked. No. There was silence on the comms. Then, angry laughter. You're joking. What, you think you can fight us? You're a scavenger in a dead ship. Ryan lifted his hand, and with a single thought, the warship answered. The ship's main cannons, weapons built to tear apart battleships, charged in an instant. Energy pulsed along their ancient barrels, and before the pirates could even process what was happening, the first shot fired. A lance of pure destruction tore through the void. It struck the lead destroyer dead center. Shields collapsed instantly. A second shot followed, then a third. The destroyer split apart in a chain of explosions, its wreckage scattering like dust. The remaining pirate ships hesitated, stunned, disoriented. Ryan didn't. He sent a silent command, and the warship unleashed hell. Turrets swiveled, locking onto targets with pinpoint precision. Missiles screamed through space, each one striking with devastating force. Smaller pirate ships vanished in bursts of fire. The ones that tried to run were hunted down by automated targeting systems. Within seconds, half the pirate fleet was gone. The survivors panicked. Their remaining ships turned, engines flaring as they tried to escape. But Ryan wasn't letting them go. Not after what they had done. Not after they had mocked him, abandoned him, tried to kill him. He locked onto the last raider and fired. The ship disintegrated. Then silence. Ryan exhaled, his heart still pounding. He had won. The warship's systems pulsed around him, still alive, still waiting. He could feel its potential, what it could become. This was no ordinary ship. It had been feared once. It had been legendary. And now, it was his. He opened a new communication channel, one that would broadcast across the sector. His voice was calm, steady, and filled with the quiet strength of a man who had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. To all who can hear me, this is Ryan Carter. This ship is awake. I am awake. And if you think humanity is weak, come find me. Then he shut off the comms and leaned back in the command throne. The galaxy would remember this day. Because Ryan Carter wasn't just a survivor. He was the beginning of something unstoppable.